Yo, what's going on, y'all? It's Cone, and this NBA offseason is probably going to be insane. The more that I think about it, the more that I look at the landscape of the league, the more reports and news that we get. I mean, Tom Thibodeau just got fired literally the second before I fired up this recording. It just seems like the entire landscape of the NBA could be set to change over the course of this summer. Shams specifically said almost word for word that this could be one of the craziest offseasons we've ever seen. And yeah, again, the more you think about it, the more that that's probably true. So I just want to go ahead and give a preview on some of my overall thoughts going into the summer. Obviously, NBA Finals is still coming up, but 28 teams have their seasons over and already have to make some pretty big decisions. So let's just talk about some of the craziness that could happen over the course of this summer. I guess we'll start off with the New York Knicks here and the big moves that they probably have to make. I mean, firing Thibs is shocking to me because they just went to the conference finals, first time in over 20 years, and Thibs isn't a perfect coach by any means, but I mean, he kind of helped build them up to where they are at this point, which is the most successful, again, they've been in multiple decades. If they think firing Thibs is going to fix this team, it's not. He got them over the hump against the Celtics, and this roster did not seem good enough to do that. They fought with the Pacers despite being outmatched. I mean, he was giving DeLon Wright and Landry Shamet minutes, and those were some of their best options off the bench. So I don't necessarily agree with the firing. Interested to see who they hire, but they need to make more personnel moves in general, and that is where potentially a name like Kevin Durant comes in. I know there's been reports that the KD sweepstakes is kind of ramping up, that the Suns are dialing back a little bit what they're asking for in return. It seems like Houston is by far the most likely outcome for KD because they have the Suns draft picks. And when you're in that position, which the Rockets put themselves in last summer, specifically for this moment, it's going to be hard for anybody to beat that offer. If you tell the Suns, hey, if you need to go into a rebuild, we've got all your capital. All you have to do to get that back is just give us Kevin Durant and kind of start that process. It's hard for the Suns to go somewhere else other than Houston. So if I had to make a prediction, I do think KD ends up with the Rockets, but there are other candidates out there. Like, I do think the Knicks, that's an interesting spot for him to potentially land, and it gives them a more dynamic offense, which I think they need. I do also just think in general they need depth, so maybe it's not going for a star, maybe it's just trying to add some other depth guys. I think San Antonio would be an interesting spot for KD too. I know there's been reports there, although I feel like if I'm the Spurs, I'm much more likely to go after like a Giannis, who of course is like the big target in this offseason, and we've been waiting now for weeks, just waiting to see if there's any news about Giannis, because there's supposed to be this meeting that was going to happen between the Bucks and him 2 weeks ago now for them to just discuss their future and what their plan is going forward. Are they going to split? Are they on the same page or not? We've got nothing. So I don't know if that meeting hasn't happened or nothing's leaked. I feel like something would have leaked if a meeting that big and that important happened. So I don't know. I don't know what's going on with Giannis. If you ask me, I do anticipate him getting traded. It's not 100%. I lean like 70-30, 60-40 even, just because with a player of that caliber, like the Bucks are only going to trade him if he demands out. Maybe Giannis is waiting to see what they can do this offseason to make the team better, and if it doesn't really go his way, then he will go ahead and formally request a trade. But if I had to pick a spot for him to land, I think the Spurs, to me, just continue to pop up as the most obvious location. You add in a guy who is still in his early 30s who can grow alongside Wemby, or Wemby can grow alongside him more so. You give up either Stephon Castle or the number 2 pick. You throw in salary filler. I think it's a move that's very worth making. Again, I keep saying this in a lot of videos, but with the new CBA, I think making those splashes while you have your top tier players on their rookie contracts, like Wemby could be a top 5 player next season and you're paying him basically next to nothing. This is the moment to make a splash before his huge contract, which is going to come up sooner than later, really starts to restrict you. So I'm all in on the Spurs making a splash and trading for a guy like Giannis. I think almost anybody should trade for Giannis and go after him. I mean, he is such a big name, such a game changer. People keep thinking about, oh, the fact that he's heading into his 30s, like how is his game going to age? I don't really care all that much. I don't think it's going to age poorly, to be honest. Giannis, a lot of his game is physicality and just dunking over people, but he got a lot better in the mid-range this season. He's a lot more skilled than people give him credit for. So I think there's nothing wrong with giving up a bunch of assets to bring him in, whether you are the Spurs or the Rockets. Although with the Rockets, I worry a little bit because it's like Şengün and Amin. Maybe you give up Şengün in that trade potentially. I don't think they'll give up Amin, but the spacing can get a little bit clunky. I know there are some Knicks fans that want Giannis, but I don't think they have the package to make a deal like that happen. Obviously, OKC is kind of out of the running now, assuming they win the NBA Finals, which of course as a Thunder fan, keeping my fingers crossed that is the case. But even still, if they lose in the Finals, I just don't see them making that big big of a shakeup. The Giannis market is super interesting. Toronto is this team that is continuously in the shadows. It feels like just lurking back there, and they've got some intriguing pieces. Like they could offer up Scotty Barnes, a great young player who could be more enticing than maybe the Spurs or the Rockets are willing to offer up. They've got draft capital. They've got salary filler that's also like young pieces. Like RJ Barrett makes a lot of money and he's still relatively young, or an Emmanuel Quickly. They could make a very intriguing package, one more so that I think people are realizing, and I honestly wouldn't hate it. I have no idea how to feel about the Raptors at the moment with this weird hodgepodge of young but not super young talent that's all super expensive. I just don't think they're going anywhere at this point. I think next year they could be like a play-in team and maybe make the playoffs if a lot of teams fall off, like the Celtics really are struggling without Tatum and Giannis is somewhere else, and like a bunch of stuff I think needs to go their way for them to make it into the playoffs. But I think play-in is attainable, but obviously that's not where they want to be. They want to get back to being a playoff team. So I'm not against them trading for Giannis, and honestly, like the Spurs to me feel like the most logical fit, but there's something that continues to tell me that he's going to be a Raptor somehow. I don't know. We know Masai Ujiri has wanted Giannis over there. There's some report that he's got mutual interest in playing in Toronto. Obviously, it's relatively close to Milwaukee, one of the closer cities he could go to, so it's not this big change in scenery. I don't know, just something to monitor with Giannis, but obviously, he's the big domino to fall. The report is that KD will likely be traded by the draft. Giannis, I could more so see that trade kind of leading on into the summer past the draft. I don't think the Bucks are in any rush to make a move that substantial. And staying out east, I think another reason why this offseason could be so eventful is because of how open the conference feels, with Jayson Tatum probably not playing at all next season, and the Celtics in this pivot mode, which is its own whole thing. Like, where does Porzingis go in? Drew Holiday, do they consider trading Derek White? I don't think they'll trade him or Jaylen Brown, but I mean, you never really know in today's NBA, anything's possible. So where do they go? What kind of pivot moves do they make to clip salary space? Do they try and bring in talent? Could Tatum come back next year? But with the Celtics no longer being this like dominant overseeing threat, it feels like kind of anybody could make a run next year. Like the Cleveland Cavaliers, they fell out in the second round, but it feels like if they make a couple of tweaks and just have better health, they could make a run to the finals next year. The Knicks, maybe that's why they fired Thibs, because they're looking at this and saying, this is our window, this is our opportunity, we need to do whatever we can to win, and they feel like just going with a new coach is the direction they have to go. And I think it could lead to a lot of teams making desperate or seemingly like insane moves in the moment, but in the long run, maybe it's the play when the NBA feels this wide open, especially out east. The Pacers are obviously really good, and I think they could get back to the finals next year, but they're not this impossible to beat threat. The Pistons, I wouldn't be shocked if they tried to add somebody. There's rumors that the Hawks could maybe be interested in Kevin Durant. The Heat never rebuild, so who could they go for? And obviously the Bucks are going to fall out if they end up trading Giannis. If they don't, they'll stay like middle of the pack, but no Dame next year. Like that's another team that's pretty good that's out of the picture. Sixers, do they try and do something crazy with the third overall pick because they take a look at this conference and say, like, this is our chance if we can get Embiid healthy and maybe we deal PG's contract in that pick and we still have Maxey and McCain. Can we make a bit of a run? Is this the year they finally make the conference finals? Can Embiid make one before GTA 6? He's got one chance left. Like, there's so much to think about. And then the Nets are apparently interested in a star. I don't know why that's a storyline that we're hearing about, but that's like the whole Eastern Conference is so intriguing to me. And also, you take a look at the West, like it's not just out East, but with the Western Conference, like obviously the Thunder probably aren't going to do too much, maybe like a consolidation trade of some kind. And you know what happens with like Topic next year. There was a lot of players on this Thunder team in draft picks. Like there's not enough roster spots, so some trade is going to have to happen this summer for Oklahoma City. And then like the Rockets, feel like they should definitely trade for somebody to be their new number one guy. Does that involve Jalen Green getting moved or Alperen Şengün? Like how big of a shakeup is it? It obviously is going to depend on the caliber of player they're chasing. But the Lakers, they've got to get a big man, and even still, like you've now got Luka and LeBron going into another season together. Who's alongside them with the Nuggets? They pushed the Thunder to 7 games. They got to feel good about that. Is Michael Porter Jr. on the way out or Jamal Murray? Like, what is the move they make to further solidify this team around Nikola Jokic? It feels like you got to do something. I have no idea what the Clippers are going to do because they're older, but they're pretty good, but still lost round 1. The Wolves feel like they could be another Kevin Durant destination, made it back-to-back conference finals, but they need something to get over the hump. Golden State always feels like they're an omnipresent threat with their young players, and Jonathan Kuminga, could they sign and trade him for something? With the Grizzlies, they feel due for a shakeup. Could they trade somebody of the big three? I wouldn't be shocked if that happened. The Mavericks are getting Cooper Flag. That's ridiculous. The Sacramento Kings feel like they could trade guys. Like all up and down, the Western Conference, even down to like the Pelicans at the 14th spot. Like the Jazz said they're not tanking anymore, which I refuse to believe, but at the 14th spot with the Pelicans, like everybody feels like they're on the table. Like Herb Jones and Trey Murphy and Zion Williamson, like any of those guys could get moved. Apparently, those are the rumors we're hearing, is that nobody's untouchable in that roster. CJ McCollum, like I guess that's the way to go. In my opinion, I've reached a point where I'm just not really buying into this Pelicans roster anymore. Like I would try to trade Zion if he's got any value. I would try to trade CJ McCollum. I keep Trey Murphy and Herb Jones. Like I don't want to get rid of those guys if you ask me. And Yves Missi was really good for you last year, but it feels like a pivot is needed. The question is, like, to what extent does that pivot happen? What is even the value of some of those guys at this moment? I don't really know. So, yeah, I don't think Devin Booker gets traded by the Suns, but that's another name that could potentially pop up. There's a lot going on, basically, in the NBA. Like, this offseason is going to be eventful, and this isn't just one of those moments where we're saying that. You know, people, I think I've made these types of videos before, tweeted out, and they're like, you say this every year. This year feels different. I think with the CBA and, again, the openness of that Eastern Conference, we could see some real insanity, especially because also this free agent market is bad. Like, it is not a good free agent market for the NBA this summer. I'm pulling up a list right now of the top guys. At the top of the free agent market, taking a look at salary guys are making right now, it's Fred VanVleet, Kyrie Irving, who's coming off of course, a major injury. He's not going to play next season. James Harden, Chris Middleton, Randall's going to be out there, John Collins, Brook Lopez, Clint Capella, Bruce Brown, Malcolm Brogdon, Miles Turner, Tim Hardaway Jr., Duncan Robinson, D'Lo, Karis LeVert, Luke Kennard, Nasri. Like, are you seeing what I'm saying? It's not a good free agency class. So if teams, which also teams just don't have cap space in general right now, if teams want to make these major moves, it has to be sign-in trades. It has to be just outright trades. So I think we're going to get a lot of activity. I think draft night is going to be super eventful. I think there's going to be a lot going on there. Just a lot in general. With this NBA offseason, it's going to be an insane one. I want to drop a video in a couple of days here talking about kind of the biggest need for every team going into the offseason. So if you have a thought on what your team's biggest need is, let me know down below in the comments what team you're a fan of and what your need is. It could be anything, like if your team needs some shooting or some defense or like a backup center, or you think they need to like choose a direction like the Chicago Bulls need to do. Just an example, not to throw shade at Bulls fans. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts real quick on this NBA offseason and how insane it could be. Just some overarching themes that you need to keep up with. Like, those are kind of the biggest things I think to note. I appreciate you watching. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos. Let me know what you think about the Tom Thibodeau thing, like where you think KD and Giannis land, all the other big names. Like, who's the biggest surprise name you think that could get traded? I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are on that. Like, what's a random destination you could see one of the big stars like a Giannis or KD landing in that maybe nobody's thinking about? Something about Toronto just feels like they're going to get Giannis somehow. I don't really know. But yeah, I appreciate you watching. I'll see you all later. Real one, say it back.